Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mavens of Manufacturing. Today, I am speaking with Allison from Out of the Box Manufacturing. And to get things started, Allison, I really like to just, get to know who you are a little bit more and share with our audience what it is that you do and some of the things that you're working on with Out of the Box Manufacturing. So can you just provide a brief introduction of yourself, what your position is, and some of the things you're working on?
Sure. So, like Meaghan said, my name is Allison Budvarson. I am COO and co-owner of Out of the Box Manufacturing. We are a contract manufacturer of electronic assemblies. So we build circuit board assemblies for other customers or other OEMs that have their own original product. We just build the electronics portion of things. Some of the things that we are really good at are building prototypes in quick turns. We can do things in a very expeditious manner. We also have certain quality certifications that allow us to build specialized products for the defense industry, medical device industry, or the aerospace industry. We do a lot of industrial and commercial applications as well, even a little bit of consumer electronics. So just a lot of variety, always working on something fun and different out of the box. I guess my husband and I started this business in 2008 in our garage. We did that for a couple of years until we finally decided that it was time to either, take a risk and start this business for real, or to let it go, because we both had other full-time jobs as well. And we decided to take the risk. So here we are, 12 or 13 years later, almost 60 employees, and just a really great, fun business to be involved in.
That's really cool. So with your personal background into manufacturing and engineering, was this something that you always wanted to pursue? Like, did you go to school for it, or did you get involved because it was something that your husband did? How did your journey begin?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because I kind of fell into it, and I think a lot of women that find themselves in these types of roles have had a similar experience. And one of the reasons why we're talking is so that we can try to help encourage women to make that choice rather than just finding themselves here like so many of the rest of us did. So one of my first full-time jobs after college was in a customer service role in a company that did very similar things to what Out of the Box does, my company does now. And I met my husband at that company. He was the engineering manager. So, very different skill sets, him being very technical and me being much more sales and marketing related.
Mm-hmm. And that's pretty common, though. During our last conversation, our initial conversation that we had to schedule all of this out, you made a really good point that a lot of women who are in the sector are mostly in the sales or marketing side of the things. And you don't really see a lot of women on the technical side. And I've spoken to other women who are actually on the technical side of the fence, and they, concur with that, where, depending on what market they're in, they really only represent between 1% and 5% of women in those specific areas. So one of the things we talked about was gender disparity. So can you kind of provide, where we might be falling short, and how, what are some of the things that we can do to kind of resolve that gender disparity that we're seeing in a variety of these opportunities within manufacturing and engineering?
Sure. So I think we have to start very young. When I was little, I had Barbies and baby dolls and art supplies, very creative types of toys to play with. Whereas my brother had Legos and erector sets and that sort of thing. So I think we can start there, right, with encouraging less gender direction in toys for kids. I have daughters and a son, and my son can play with Barbies and dolls, and my girls can play with Legos and snap circuits. I think that they can all do a lot of things. So I think what happens is boys, as they grow up, tend to be more inclined to be involved in math and science disciplines, whereas girls, they've developed a lot more interpersonal skills through their play. Mm-hmm. and experiences. So we tend to see girls and women move away from math and technology and more into those people type careers like human resources and sales and marketing and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. At the school level, what do you think we can do to sort of change that? Because I've talked to, I just did an event back in October, and it was a really successful event. And I was able to hear some of the pain points, not just the teachers were going through with the school, but, some of the things that they were experiencing with the counselors. And it seems like that same thought process is kind of seeping over into how we're setting up these kids for the careers that they choose. So like girls are encouraged to go more into that interpersonal route than boys are. And sometimes they don't get the encouragement from their counselors to, pursue STEM opportunities. So what are your thoughts on how we can sort of change that, and what can schools do maybe in terms of what they're pitching to each student?
Yeah. So I think clubs are a really great way to get girls involved in math, technology, and manufacturing environments. In Washington State, we have a program called Washington First Robotics, and it's an after-school club. And the club is usually chaperoned by a teacher at the school, and there's different age levels. So there's Lego League for elementary, and it kind of goes up from there. So I think in schools, we need to be very active participants in clubs like that. And we need to make sure that we're recruiting or drawing in the girls as well as the boys, so you have that first meeting of First Robotics and you don't see any girls in the room. Now it's time to go talk to some teachers and say, who do you think would enjoy this? And how do I invite them to this club or this activity? There's other things too, STEAM fairs, science fairs, girls can come up with some really incredibly creative projects for that. So I think that we have to actively recruit or seek invitations for girls to draw them in. There's a lot of talk about how, on a job description, a man will apply for a job and consider himself qualified if he meets 70% of the requirements, right? But women assume that they need to meet 95 to 100% of the requirements before they're eligible for that position. So kind of thinking in those terms, pulling the girls in so that they've got their foot in the door in a space that might be a little bit less intimidating in a club rather than in, an actual advanced math class in school or something like that. There's lots of other things too. Like Seattle has another organization called SUM. It's a Seattle Unified Math Museum. So seeking parents can, proactively take their children to activities like this to help give them exposure. And that's great, especially for young kids. They have things like logic puzzles and, finding patterns and all that kind of good stuff. So I think parents and teachers need to do a really good job of reaching out and drawing in.
I think building up the confidence too within girls is especially important, and also even encouraging guys within their school to, be supportive and be advocates for the girls that are in the class too. When I hosted that event back in October, there were 30 students that attended and only 4 of them were women. And it wasn't a shock to see that. Like we're all pretty familiar with that ratio. Yeah. And the girls were kind of, intimidated even being a part of that event. And they personally came up to me and they were like, are there any girl speakers that are coming on? Are we going to hear from women? And there were a couple women that presented towards the end of the event. So it was like a big sigh of relief when they were able to make that connection. But I think, groups such as the ones that you mentioned, and there's also an international group that I would like to mention of Women in Manufacturing. It's WIM, and they do an exceptional job. They have chapters available all over the United States. They're starting to actually be a global organization too, establishing chapters in other parts of the world, which is fantastic. But I think it's really important too to just encourage guys within the school to be cheerleaders of women in those opportunities well too. I had a conversation with a girl, and she was talking about how she started getting involved with FIRST Robotics at the age of 10. And she said it was a really toxic environment because she was the only girl on the team. And there was a lot of bad, just comments made. She got bullied after she left that team and tried another team. She got stalked, like just negative things just attached to that. But she, persevered and she kept pushing forward. And now she's doing amazing things in engineering and manufacturing. But it's just unfortunate that kind of stuff still exists. And hopefully we can, encourage guys not to be that way and to support women who want to join these clubs with them and work with them and collaborate with them instead of looking at it as some sort of competition where they need to be negative,
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a really great, that sort of thing happened to me just the other day, and it happens to me regularly. My husband and I were applying for a loan, and the lender we were talking to describing our business and what we do. And my husband said, I'm the CEO, my wife is the COO. And the lender says, oh, so she's like the office manager. And my husband said, no. I said, she's the COO, right? She's very important. She's as important to this company as I am. And I really appreciated him standing up for me that way, and kind of just dispelling that right out of the gate. And he asked me afterwards, he said, gosh, that really made me mad. I know you say that stuff happens all the time, but that was really out in the front for me. And I said, yeah. He said, well, did it upset you? And I said, it probably would have, but because you addressed it right then and there and you stood up for me, I let it roll off my back and it didn't really bother me. So that's a really great example of ways that men can be advocates for, their wives, sisters, cousins, et cetera, coworkers, just kind of stepping in when they hear that sort of, just stereotype and stopping it right away.
Yeah. And if, another good point too, is if, there's a meeting going on and it's mostly men in the room and there's one or two women in the room and you notice that they're not talking or adding to the conversation, be proactive and, call them out, ask them, say, hey, what do you think about this? And get them comfortable, make them feel part of the conversation. And, 9 times out of 10, they'll when asked, they'll offer their opinion. I know I do sometimes, like I can tend to be introverted sometimes and not talk because I feel like it's not my place to. But then if someone invites me to the conversation, I feel a lot more comfortable. One of the key things I'm working on is confidence, because in some situations I notice that I lack it, and getting 1% better is a big deal. So and another thing that we also talked about too is mentorships, and we touched on it a little bit as we're leading up to this conversation. But we also, like in your words, what do you believe mentorship means, and how can companies make it happen or include it as part of their business strategy so that they're offering those opportunities, not just to women, but men as well too? Like, how can we help our employees get better and continue to improve, but also feel part of the company? Because that's a huge issue in some manufacturing companies as well too. There's this toxic work culture, and it is adding to the skills gap that we're seeing. So what can companies do, in your opinion, to kind of help curb that and be a better place for employees to want to work?
Yeah, well, I think that mentorship and the advocacy really needs to be a part of the job description for managers and supervisors and executive management as well. Picking younger people within your department finding those what we call them hypos in the HR world, the high performing, high potential individuals, and just bringing them along, and making sure that they're in the meetings that they need to be in, taking them to events and introducing them to people. I am the president of the board for a organization called CAMPS, the Center of Advanced Manufacturing of Puget Sound. So I am working on starting a student and young professional group within CAMPS. And so I will make sure, and the other board members that are part of it, so when we have an event, we're actively reaching out to those type of people that we've identified as high performance or high potential individuals and inviting them to those meetings. I think that's really important. Or when you're at an association and there's a committee, volunteering someone, hey, I know this young woman, she's got a ton of potential and I'd love to recommend her to be on this committee, or him or whatever have you. So just really advocating for each other in that way, I think it should be a bullet point on a job description for management.
I think that's a great point. One of the companies that I used to work for, I believe he was the COO of the company. We went to a manufacturing event that was within the community, and it was just every single manufacturing company within the local community. And they got together to kind of talk about industry pain points and what certain companies were doing. And it was surrounding Manufacturing Month. And so they brought in the mayor and a keynote speaker, and some of the companies were able to set up booths and just talk about, like a smaller size trade show. And one of the women that was there, she was the founder of an organization called the WOTM, or Women of Today's Manufacturing. And our COO was like, you need to know her, meet her. I'm going to introduce you to her. So we were able to meet. And then he was like, we're going to set you up with membership for that group so that you can know who's manufacturing in our city. You can, network with them. If you have any questions about any of our processes, you can talk to these other companies. Some of them are customers. So it was a really cool opportunity that they even went that route and connected myself and the other girl. We were the only two in the marketing department at the time. But it was just to help us feel better about what we were marketing and how we were marketing it. And we had other resources to help us. So it was really cool. And I think some of these organizations that are out there kind of do the same thing. So if companies are part of it, definitely encourage every employee to be part of these groups. So in particular with out of the box manufacturing, do you also partner with some of your tech schools that are in your community or some of the local high schools or middle schools? And in what ways do you do that? I know you mentioned the first robotics team, but what specifically does your company do to kind of bring in the next generation who might not be interested or even know what manufacturing is?
Sure. So you can see there's some T-shirts on my wall back there. The blue T-shirt we got because we made a financial donation to one of the local robotics teams for their world competition. So they were really excited about that. Nice. And we continue to contribute to their team. And they have this great big team and all kinds of roles and, lots of girls and lots of guys on their team. So, picking an organization that we think is doing it right and then supporting them so that they continue doing what they're doing is important. Other things that Out of the Box does to engage young people, we partner with an apprenticeship program locally. They're called AJAC. We've gotten several part-time high school students as employees through their organization, and they actually they'll work with us part-time evenings as a senior. And then we give them the opportunity to stay on through the summer and increase their hours if they want to. And actually last year, 2 of the seniors decided to do that. And we put them on a professional development track. So one is moving into test technician and the other is moving into process engineering. So, just trying to be really flexible with their work schedule so that they continue to go to school as well as work. That's been really beneficial for us. We can also participate in National Manufacturing Day. It's usually the first Friday of every October. This year and last year, we didn't get to do events like we normally do, but I think that that's an excellent opportunity for employers and students to get together and understand how much fun manufacturing can be. Generally, in a normal year, we'll have over 100 students through our building from various different high schools, and then we give them tours. We set up booths, so that they can touch and feel and play with tools and parts. And we'll even, one year we even made circuits with an LED and a battery, so it had that hands-on activity for students to do. We demo our machines, and what's great about that too is because teachers come along. So then I can make relationships with teachers and keep in touch with the teacher year after year. So every year when they've got a new batch of students, we're keeping in touch and creating that sort of relationship over time. So every year we have a new batch of students come through. And that's really important. And then of course, you mentioned memberships, right? So another great organization is called Women in Electronics. And we do pay for memberships to Women in Electronics for some of our employees. And they have a mentorship program as well. So I made sure that one of our employees got signed up for that, and she did that for about 6 months, and she really enjoyed that. So, there's lots of different things that employers can do. I sit on, I think, 3 different advisory committees, wow. 1 for a high school and then 2 for technical schools as well. So that gives me the opportunity to tell schools what it is, a business like mine needs their employees to learn, but then it also gives me a chance to make connections with the instructors and some of the students as they're graduating. So, we get to have that, if I've got an opening, I can send it to the teacher and that student can apply. So just lots and lots of different activities.
Does some of that information also get translated into their curriculum then? So do you ever have a chance to look at like what they're going to actually be presenting to the students in sort of like the layout of the course, or how does that whole partnership work?
Yeah. It's actually, it's really amazing. I went to an advisory committee meeting for the local high school a couple weeks ago, and they were asking the advisory committee members what type of certifications they should be facilitating for their students. So, we were talking about Lean 5S, Six Sigma, certifications, green belts, black belts, that sort of thing. Having students take the Wizen test and, the OSHA 30 and that sort of thing. So your voice is heard in that way, and the instructors can facilitate those activities for students.
I think that's really cool, and definitely something that might be overlooked because a lot of high schools might not think that they can build that relationship with the manufacturers within their community. And it's really just connecting the dots and keeping up with that conversation and finding creative ways of how, you can get students exposed to what's going on in their own backyards. I know COVID was a big downer for everyone, and it kind of put a halt on in-person facility tours. When I wanted to do a face-to-face facility tour, a lot of the manufacturers didn't want to be liable for getting a kid sick. So sometimes a virtual event is better than nothing. And I think that opens up an opportunity too. So like if, teachers are another resource that we're running out of, there's not a lot of people to fill up the teaching positions. The high school that I talked to, a lot of them are retiring and they don't have anybody applying for those positions. So I think another creative way manufacturers could maybe potentially get involved with high schools is, donating an hour of their time and teaching a course either on a virtual platform or just going to the high school and being in person for it. I think that would be really beneficial. So
yeah.
In terms of, girls applying for these positions, my last question to you is really, why is it important for us to get girls involved with engineering and manufacturing? I know sometimes this conversation can be a little uncomfortable for people to have, But it's really about diversifying the workforce, and there's reasons why that's beneficial. So I just wanted to get your insights, like what would manufacturing be missing if we didn't include women in these conversations and encourage them to pursue career pathways in engineering and manufacturing?
Yeah, well, manufacturing and technology move so quickly. And you hit the nail on the head when you talked about diversity. Not just diversity in gender or race, but the diversity of thought, because each individual person brings their own experiences and ideas to the table. And if we allow that brainstorming and that creativity to happen, in a diverse group of people, we will ultimately have better products and better engineers and, more talent spread across our organizations. Out of the box manufacturing has gender parity on our management team. And I think that it's definitely beneficial to our organization as a whole.
What is your ratio for men to women at out of the box manufacturing?
I don't have that off the top of my head. I know it's 50-50 on the management team. On the manufacturing floor, I think that we're probably closer to like 60-40, with women being more represented on our manufacturing floor.
That's super cool. Well, congratulations for that. Well, I want to thank you, Allison, for taking time out of your day to come speak with me today on Mavens of Manufacturing. If anyone has any questions about, your products and services or positions that you might have available, who can they contact and where should they go for more information?
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Allison Budvarson, or you can find us on the internet. obmfg.com is our webpage, and all of our social media links and everything are available there. jobs@obmfg.com too is our email address. So if someone has a resume and they want to send it on in, I'm happy to look at it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Allison. And to all that were listening today, thank you for joining us for another episode of Mavens of Manufacturing. Stay tuned next week, and we will be back with another great episode. Have a good day. This has been another episode of Mavens of Manufacturing. Subscribe for more and make sure to tune in next time.